Old Trafford is still buzzing. The final whistle is just blown on a 3-2 victory over Liverpool. Matheus Cunha has just posted one word on Instagram in response to reports claiming he should be rested. That word is what? Michael Carrick is standing in front of cameras being asked if he will still be in charge next season. And somewhere in the background, a summer budget of £150 million is already being discussed for midfield alone. This is not the end of Manchester United's season. This is the beginning of the most important summer this club has faced in years. Champions League football is confirmed, the money is coming, the targets are on the table, and every single decision made in the next few weeks will shape what Manchester United look like for the next 3 to 5 years. The question is not whether they can rebuild. The question is whether they will get it right. Let us get into it. Here is what you need to understand before we go any further. Manchester United qualifying for the Champions League is not just a footballing achievement. It is a financial reset. It is a recruitment unlock. And it changes almost every single conversation happening around this football club right now. The manager question changes. The budget question changes. The player recruitment targets change. Even the conversations around players potentially leaving change. Everything shifts the moment you secure Champions League football. And that is exactly where Manchester United now stand. If you want this level of breakdown on every major Manchester United story as it develops, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel exists to give you the full picture, not just the headlines. Subscribe and you will never miss an analysis like this one. Now let us go story by story. Cristiano Ronaldo and Michael Carrick. Here is what ESPN FC posted. Back in December of 2021, Cristiano Ronaldo shared a public message about Michael Carrick. He said, and I will read this exactly as written, Michael Carrick was a class act as a player, and he can become a great coach as well. Nothing is impossible for this guy. Personally, I am proud to have played with him by my side as well as with him as a manager on our bench. ESPN FC then added their own observation. They noted that 5 years later, Carrick has now guided Manchester United into the Champions League, beating Manchester City, Arsenal, Chelsea and Liverpool along the way. Now here is my analysis of this moment. That Ronaldo post from 2021 was almost forgotten. It was written during a chaotic period at Old Trafford. Carrick was interim manager for a very short time back then before leaving the club. Nobody could have predicted that he would return years later and do exactly what Ronaldo described. What makes this significant is not the nostalgia. It is what it confirms about Carrick as a manager. Ronaldo, who has worked with some of the greatest coaches in world football, saw something in Carrick early. That observation has now been validated on the pitch. Manchester United beat 4 of the biggest clubs in England to reach the Champions League under his leadership. That is not luck. That is management. Transfer budget. This post from Simply UAT, citing journalist Chris Wheeler, states the following. Manchester United are prepared to spend around £150 million on 3 central midfielders this summer. If the budget allows, around £80 million has been set aside specifically for a marquee signing to replace Casemiro. My analysis here is straightforward. The phrase, if the budget allows, is important. It tells you that this is not a guaranteed spend. It is a planned spend, conditional on the financial situation at the club. But what is clear is that the midfield is seen as the biggest priority area for this summer. 3 central midfielders, one of them valued at £80 million. That tells you the club recognises that the midfield needs a full rebuild, not just a small adjustment. Casemiro's era is ending, and the club is planning to invest heavily to replace that role with quality. Carlos Baleba. This post states that Manchester United are leading the race to sign Carlos Baleba from Brighton as the long-term replacement for Casemiro. Brighton could reportedly accept a fee of between 75 and 80 million euros. Arsenal, Chelsea, Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich are all said to be monitoring the player. My analysis, this is a rumour. It is important to say that clearly, but it is a credible rumour because the numbers align with the budget we just discussed. 80 million euros for Baleba sits comfortably within the range that Manchester United are reportedly prepared to spend on their marquee midfield signing. What is also significant here is the competition. Arsenal, Chelsea, Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich are not small clubs. If all 4 of those clubs are genuinely interested, Brighton will not be rushed. They will hold their price. This means Manchester United need to move decisively if Baleba is genuinely their top target. Being first to make a serious offer matters in negotiations like this. Ownership structure. This post, citing Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic, explains the ownership agreement between Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazer family. The agreement reportedly contains a clause that changes in February 2027. At that point, the Glazers would be able to sell their shares alongside Ratcliffe's stake at a price they consider fair. The Post notes that this could push Ratcliffe to accelerate his sporting ambitions because success on the pitch may become more important to securing full control and avoiding any unwanted shift in ownership direction. My analysis. This is one of the most underreported stories in the Manchester United ecosystem right now, and it has real consequences. February 2027 is not far away. That is less than 2 years from today. What this ownership clause effectively means is that Ratcliffe has a limited window to prove that his leadership of the sporting side is working. If results are poor and the club is failing on the pitch, the Glazers have options. They could sell their stake to someone else. That would potentially change the entire direction of the club again. So the urgency behind this summer's recruitment is not just about football, it is about ownership politics. Ratcliffe needs Champions League football to continue. He needs the club to be moving forward visibly. And that makes every decision this summer carry double the weight. Simply UAT, Evan Ndicka. This post states that Manchester United are closely monitoring the situation of Evan Ndicka at AS Roma ahead of the summer window. Roma are believed to be asking around 40 million euros for the centre-back, who is expected to attract strong interest from multiple clubs. My analysis. Defensively, Manchester United have needed reinforcement for a long time. The fact that they are monitoring Ndicka at 40 million euros tells you they are not just focused on midfield. The defensive unit is also being assessed. At 40 million euros, Ndicka would represent a significant but not outrageous investment for a centre-back with Premier League potential. This one is early. It is a monitoring situation, not a negotiation, but it is worth tracking closely. Decision-making structure. This post from UTD Exclusive, again citing Laurie Whitwell of The Athletic, lays out exactly who is driving Manchester United's summer recruitment. Here is what was stated directly. Michael Carrick has been involved in meetings and his input has been registered. Jason Wilcox is described as a pivotal figure as director of football. Christopher Vival, the director of recruitment, is also central to the process. Omar Barada, the chief executive, has input. The scouts and data teams play a role. At the very top is Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who sets the financial parameters. And Matt Hargreaves, the director of negotiations, is the person who actually communicates with player agents and sporting directors. My analysis. This structure is important to understand because it tells you that no single person is making decisions alone. It is a committee-based approach. Carrick has a voice, but he is not running the transfer process. That sits with Wilcox and Villal. The negotiations are handled by Hargreaves, and Ratcliffe has final authority over budgets. What this also tells you is that the summer will not be chaotic in the way previous summers were. There are clearly defined roles. There is a clear chain of authority. Whether the decisions they make are good ones is another question, but the process based on this breakdown looks organised. Transfer News Live. Matías Fernández. This post, sourced from The Telegraph, states that Matías Fernández, a 21-year-old midfielder currently at West Ham United, has emerged as a summer transfer target for Manchester United. West Ham are eager to keep him, but Fernández is likely to move on if they are relegated from the Premier League. Manchester United scouts have been tracking him throughout the season, and their interest has increased in recent weeks. They had previously chosen not to pursue a deal last summer, following Southampton's relegation. My analysis. This is a rumour with conditions attached. The key condition is West Ham's survival in the Premier League. If West Ham stay up, this deal becomes significantly less likely. If they go down, Fernández becomes more available and more attainable. At 21 years old, he fits the profile of a player Manchester United would target for the future. But I want to be careful here. This is monitoring an interest. It is not a negotiation. It is not close to a deal. It is a name to watch. The United stand Ederson from Atalanta. This post, citing Matteo Moretto, states that Manchester United have moved ahead in the race to sign Ederson from Atalanta. The club are prepared to offer him a net salary of 4.5 million euros, which is equivalent to £150,000 per week. This offer exceeds what Atletico Madrid had agreed with the player in January, before Atalanta blocked that move. Atalanta are looking for a fee of between 39 and 44 million pounds. My analysis. This is the most advanced-looking midfield story in everything I am covering today. The fact that Manchester United are offering more than Atletico Madrid had already agreed suggests serious intent. This is not casual interest. This is competitive bidding. Ederson was close to leaving Atalanta in January. That move collapsed at the club level, not the player level. So the player has already shown he is open to leaving. Manchester United are now positioning themselves as his preferred destination with a stronger financial offer. The fee of between 39 and 44 million pounds is also very manageable. If the total midfield budget is around 150 million pounds, the United stand Harry Kane. This post states that Manchester United are interested in signing Harry Kane this summer. Kane is approaching key contract talks with Bayern Munich at the end of the season. Manchester United is said to be ready to act if any complications arise in those negotiations. However, the post is clear that Manchester United are not prioritising a striker. Bayern Munich remain relaxed and still expect Kane to sign a new deal. Manchester United would not pass up the opportunity if Kane became available, but they are not chasing this. My analysis. I want to be precise here because this story can easily be misread. This is not a transfer pursuit. This is a contingency. Manchester United are not making Kane a priority. They are simply aware that if his contract situation with Bayern becomes complicated, they would be interested. Bayern are not concerned. They expect him to stay. So unless something unexpected changes in those talks, this story is unlikely to develop further this summer. File this under watching from a distance. Champions League revenue. This post, citing Sky, breaks down what Champions League qualification means financially for Manchester United. Even if the club were to lose every single Champions League match, they would still earn up to £70 million through additional broadcast revenue, ticket sales, merchandising, and corporate activity. On top of that, kit supplier Adidas will pay an additional £10 million simply because Manchester United are back in European competition at the top level. My analysis. These numbers matter enormously for understanding what this club can actually spend. £80 million in additional guaranteed revenue changes the summer budget significantly. It explains why the stories about £150 million being available for midfielders are at least financially plausible. Without Champions League qualification, a spend of that size would have been extremely difficult to justify. With it, it becomes manageable. The Adidas bonus alone effectively funds a large portion of a mid-range transfer. This is why qualifying for the Champions League was described earlier as a financial reset. This is the proof. Transfer News Live, Morgan Rogers. This post, sourced from Telefootball, states that Manchester United are keeping track of Morgan Rogers as a potential long-term option for the number 10 position. Rogers is also capable of playing on the left flank, which is an area the club are aiming to strengthen ahead of next season. Manchester United plan to assess his situation throughout the summer. My analysis. This is a very early stage story. Assess his situation throughout the summer is not a strong phrase. It means no decision has been made. What it does confirm is that the number 10 position and the left flank are both areas of focus for recruitment. Morgan Rogers is young and has had a strong season, but based purely on what is known here, this is a name being monitored, nothing more. Peter Schmeichel on Sesko. This post shares comments made by Peter Schmeichel about Benjamin Sesko. Schmeichel said the following, and again I will read this as stated. The work that he puts in and how well he presses and how well he closes down, it is not really there to be seen on a TV screen. Add to that a Mesamo on the right and Cunha doing the same, with Bruno behind. That sort of four players, the way they were pressing Liverpool's back four, they never had a chance to get out. My analysis. Schmeichel is making a tactical point here that goes beyond goals and assists. He is talking about the collective pressing system that Manchester United deployed against Liverpool. Sesko and Bumo, Cunha and Bruno Fernandes press Liverpool's defensive line as a coordinated unit. According to Schmeichel, Liverpool's back four had no way to play out from the back because of how aggressively and intelligently that press was organised. This is what modern football looks like at its best. And it tells you that under Carrick, Manchester United have developed a clear and effective tactical identity. The pressing is not random, it is a system, and it worked against one of the best teams in the country. Elliot Anderson, this post, again citing Laurie Whitwell of The Athletic, addresses the situation around Elliot Anderson and Manchester United. Nottingham Forest have set an asking price that Whitwell describes as well, over £100 million, with a figure of around £125 million having been mentioned. Whitwell's assessment is that this is too expensive for Manchester United. He adds that Manchester City feels like the more likely destination for Anderson and notes that Rodri signing a new contract at City could have an impact on that. My analysis. The message here is clear. Manchester United will not pay £125 million for Elliot Anderson. That is not within their operating range for a single signing, given everything else they need to address this summer. Nottingham Forest know this, which is why the price is so high. They are not selling cheaply. And frankly, if Manchester City are the realistic destination, then this story for Manchester United appears to be over before it properly began. Galatasaray and Bruno Fernandes. This post from respected journalist Florian Plettenberg, citing Sky Sport Germany, states that Galatasaray want to make headlines this summer with significant transfer moves. Their primary targets are a number 10 and a number 6. Galatasaray were interested in Bruno Fernandes during the last transfer window. He remains their ultimate dream target. They plan to make contact with his representatives again. However, Platenberg notes that Galatasaray do not see realistic chances of signing him because Bruno Fernandes can now play Champions League football with Manchester United. My analysis. This is the clearest confirmation in everything I have covered today that Champions League qualification directly protects Manchester United's most important players. Galatasaray wanted Bruno. They still want Bruno. But they know they cannot compete with a club offering him Champions League football at the highest level. This is exactly why finishing in the top 4 was so critical. It is not just about prestige. It is about keeping your best players. Without Champions League football, this conversation about Bruno Fernandes, the situation surrounding Matthias Cunha following Manchester United's 3-2 victory over Liverpool is one that tells you a great deal about his standing at the club and in the country right now. Cunha scored the opening goal in that win. He had only recently returned from a hip injury, having missed the Brentford match during his recovery. His performance was described as impressive, made even more so because he was not fully match fit by conventional standards. Following the victory, a report from ESPN Brazil emerged, claiming that Brazil's national team wanted Manchester United to limit Cunha's playing time in the final 3 Premier League matches of the season. The suggestion was that an agreement existed between the club and the Brazilian Football Confederation to be cautious about his minutes on the pitch, allowing him to be fully fit for the World Cup. Conconna's response was immediate. Via his Instagram story, he posted a photograph of himself celebrating at Old Trafford and captioned it with one word and a laughing emoji. He simply wrote, "What?" That response is significant for several reasons. First, it suggests that if such an agreement exists, Conconna himself was not informed about it or does not consider it legitimate. Second, it shows a player who is fully committed to finishing the season strongly with Manchester United. He is not looking over his shoulder at international commitments. He is focused on the club. The situation for Manchester United regarding their final 3 matches is also worth examining here. The club have secured Champions League qualification. That was the primary objective, but there is still something to play for. Manchester United currently sit 3rd in the Premier League table. To mathematically secure that 3rd place finish, 4 points from the remaining 3 games are needed, and a 2nd place finish is not yet ruled out. Manchester City, in 2nd, are on 71 points. Manchester United can still reach a maximum of 73. The remaining fixtures are as follows. First, a trip to the Stadium of Light to face Sunderland on Saturday the 9th of May. Second, the final home match of the season against Nottingham Forest on Sunday the 17th of May. And third, the final game of the campaign, away at Brighton on Sunday the 24th of May. Every point in these games still matters. And based on Cunha's own reaction to the Brazil rotation story, it is clear he intends to be fully involved. Wayne Rooney on Michael Carrick. The second article addresses a key question that is circulating around Manchester United right now. Can Michael Carrick handle the Champions League? The context is important. Carrick's role as interim head coach will come to an end after the final 3 Premier League matches of the 2025 to 2026 season. He took over from Ruben Amorim, who was dismissed earlier in the campaign. Since taking charge, Carrick has transformed the club's trajectory. He secured Champions League qualification. He oversaw a 3-2 win over Liverpool at Old Trafford. And he has done all of this while the question of his long-term future at the club remains officially unresolved. Wayne Rooney addressed one of the central arguments made against Carrick being appointed permanently. That argument is this. The Champions League brings more matches, more fixture congestion, and more demands on squad rotation. Some believe Carrick does not have the experience to manage that level of complexity. Rooney's response, speaking on his BBC Sports show, was direct. He pointed to Carrick's time managing Middlesbrough in the Championship. His argument was that squad rotation in the Championship is actually more difficult than in the Premier League because the quality depth available to Championship managers is far more limited. A manager in the Championship typically has around 14 players with genuine quality, and beyond that, the squad drops off significantly. Carrick, according to Rooney, has already learned how to manage with limited resources and how to rotate effectively in a demanding schedule. The Champions League, Rooney suggested, would not be an unfamiliar challenge for a manager with that background. Carrick himself was asked directly about his future after the Liverpool win. His response was measured and careful. He acknowledged that everything has gone well and that there are still things to achieve in the final 3 matches. But he made clear that the decision about his long-term role is not in his hands. He said he is happy with where things are and wants the team to keep improving. He is not the one making that call. The reality for the club is that a decision on the managerial position will need to be made very soon. The transfer window moves quickly. A new permanent manager would naturally want input into recruitment. Every day that the role remains unresolved is a day that complicates the summer planning. And with the ownership clause from 2027 creating additional urgency, the people at the top of this club cannot afford to delay this decision for much longer. Let me bring everything together now. Manchester United are standing at one of the most important moments in the club's recent history. Champions League football is confirmed. The financial landscape has changed. The summer budget, while not unlimited, is real and substantial. The targets are beginning to emerge. The internal structure of decision-making is now clearer than it has been in years. But there are still unanswered questions. The manager situation is unresolved. The ownership dynamic has a clock attached to it. Several of the transfer targets being discussed are still at the rumour stage. What the evidence does suggest is that the club is moving with more direction and more structure than it has in a long time. There is a clear understanding of which positions need strengthening. Midfield is the top priority. The left flank and the centre-back area are also being addressed. The financial case for serious investment has been made by Champions League qualification itself. Matheus Cunha, Bruno Fernandes and the system Michael Carrick has built around them represent the foundation. The summer will determine whether that foundation is built upon correctly. And the decisions made in the next few weeks will define the direction of this club for years to come. That is the full picture for today. This has been Adam United Analyst. Subscribe if you want to stay ahead of every development, and I will see you in the next one.